I do find that there's definitely more fluctuations in my glucose levels, and it's making it a little bit harder to tighten control. And during my menstrual cycle, I find that I'm nearly on twice as much insulin and more insulin resistance. And it's definitely a topic that I I know that I need to educate myself on a little bit more. And like even like your podcasts have been brilliant to create a little bit more awareness and understanding of this phase. And I think that's it. Like I think we're at an age where people are talking about it more, where before it was really kind of a hidden topic, and no one, or it's a sensitive topic. No one wanted to talk about it. So I love the fact that we're sharing our experiences.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Type 1 in Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Slemp. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 14 years old and now founder and CEO of Abundant Health with Melissa. And as a certified health coach, I know the unique challenges of managing diabetes in midlife and beyond. So I've created a coaching model that has empowered hundreds of women to thrive despite their diagnosis. And each week, I'll bring you conversations and strategies with guest experts, along with insights from my own 40 plus years of living with type 1 diabetes. I'll also share how my faith empowers me both emotionally and helps me to navigate the daily challenges. So if you're a woman ready to redefine your diabetes journey, this podcast is for you. So before we dive in, remember this podcast isn't a substitute for personalized medical advice. Always consult with your physician or medical professional before making any changes to your diet, insulin dosages, or healthcare plan. Welcome to today's episode of Type 1 in Midlife and Beyond, where we dive into the journeys and insights of women living and thriving with type 1 diabetes. And today we have a special guest, Erin Dolan. She is a diabetes health coach and creator of Crazy About Diabetes. She is originally from Florida, and Erin has been living with type 1 diabetes for over 32 years now. And she has a adventurous spirit, which has taken her around the world, from living in Australia to cycling from Central America and backpacking through Europe and Asia. And as we talk today, anything is possible. And we're going to learn more about that as Erin shares her story. And her work, it really is about helping others with diabetes shine through her, with her workshops and her programs on mental health, nutrition, and lifestyle. She's now living in Lahinch, Clare, Ireland. I hope I said that right, with her husband and 2 children. And she enjoys sea swimming and surfing. Definitely an outdoor type of girl. So can't wait to introduce you to her today. And today, Erin's going to talk about the emotional challenges many people with diabetes face, like hiding their condition and feeling self-conscious, some things that she herself experienced. And she shares tips for maintaining a healthy relationship with food and getting enough protein without harming the kidneys, right? So Erin also discusses managing delayed glucose responses and the effects of aging and hormonal changes on blood sugar control. A hot topic here on the show. So join us as Erin shares her personal experiences, her strategies, and her wisdom, and what she's learned about herself and diabetes and her 32 years living with it and managing it very well. I hope you enjoy today's conversation as much as I did recording it. Well, hello, everybody. I am here today with Miss Erin Dolan. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Really excited to do this today.
Yes, we met, and I'm a big believer that there's a reason we meet people, and there was a reason that you and I came together. We have a lot in common.
We do.
And you're also a coach as well. So I think that's such a it's such a connection. And I'll just
Yeah.
remember, and this is kind of off the cuff. I remember my husband years ago, I ran into a friend. She's a coach that lives
Hmm.
here in town.
Yeah.
Kim Hines. She's been on the show 3 or 4 times. And I remember him coming home and I was telling him, yeah, I met this girl at the gym and
Yeah.
she's another coach. And he looked at me with horror. He's like, oh, that's competition. I'm like, oh, no, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, no, no,
No.
no, no. But that would be the first response, is that you would feel threatened
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
presence of somebody else. But needless to say, we've been like best friends here in town. We see each other all the time. And all we do is
Yeah.
help one another, because there are so, as you know, and you can agree
That's
with this, there are so
abs
many people that need help. There is no
so
competition.
much.
Yeah.
No, no. And we have this connection on like a deeper level when it comes to coaching. We have this kind
Mm-hmm.
of understanding. And especially when it comes to diabetes, there's a whole different connection that you have.
Yeah. And I think, and you could probably agree with this. I mean, we bring who we are,
Hmm.
and I'll give you a moment here in a minute to kind of share a little bit about your
Yeah.
journey. But I think that is the whole point, is that we come and we meet and we
Hmm.
connect with people, and people, whether they become clients or not, they connect
Yeah.
with us for who we are. And that's our uniqueness, not only as people, but as coaches. So that's how
Yeah.
we stand away.
we have
Mm-hmm.
we have our own personalities and we have our own
Mm-hmm.
kind of experiences that we can connect with people and where they're going in life and where
Mm-hmm.
their journey is. So it is
Yeah.
it's quite special to like connect as as a coach and then as a friend, but also in terms of us, it's funny because I'm originally from Florida and you're living in Florida
Mm-hmm.
now.
That's right. That's right. Well, tell us a little bit about, yeah, because you are over you're in Ireland right now.
Yes.
So tell us
Yes.
about your 32 years
Yeah.
with type 1. So tell us, if you want to just kind of tell us your journey, your
Sure.
diagnosis, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed at age 10 with type 1 diabetes, and growing up in Florida at the time at age 10, it's kind of I don't know, maybe a vulnerable age because of the fact that like that's the last thing you want to do is feel different.
Mm,
Leading, but before even the diagnosis, I was pretty active in dance. And it did kind of go on for a little bit. I lost a lot of weight, the excessive thirst, the pretty common symptoms. And then I was rushed to the emergency room, nearly actually into diabetic coma. There was at
mm,
one point I remember waking up in the hospital bed and seeing my mom and my dad like with their heads knelt down. They had no clue what was to come.
mm.
And when the doctor told me I had
Yeah.
diabetes, I honestly, I didn't even know what it was. I couldn't even spell it
Mm,
probably at the time.
right.
But there was a lot of kind of fear and unknown, how it was going to impact my life. And definitely my parents were feeling nervous, and there was a sense of guilt. And I had this opportunity a couple years to actually talk to them more about it
Mm,
because at the time you don't really think about your family in this. You're just thinking about yourself. And there was this notion that maybe they could have done something differently to change this, and why us.
mhm,
So, at that time, I had the opportunity to be in the hospital for a week to learn how to inject myself with insulin and how to test my blood sugar.
mhm.
And I even, practiced on a teddy bear at the time because I was
Mm,
going to be self-injecting. And when I think about that, so that was 32 years ago, the technology was so ancient, compared to what we
mhm.
have now. So
That's for sure.
you'd yeah, you'd test your blood sugar and then you'd have to maybe wait like a minute. You could go to the bathroom and come back and you still didn't have your
Yeah,
reading. And
yeah.
then also kind of mixing insulins. And for the most part, there was really this unawareness of even what my blood sugars were doing during the day. So that was kind of a strange thing, because now we're so aware with all the CGMs and the insulin pumps that we have. We manage it so differently than we
Mhm,
did, years ago. But I was lucky that there was support from the local diabetes community there, and we did engage with JDRF, and that was kind of a helpful time, like at the point of diagnosis.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And something that stood out is the fact that you were in the hospital for a week as well.
Mm.
Yeah, because it sounds like you were. So you're. We have 10 years difference. So it was 92 for you, 1992, and then it was
Yes, that's right.
1982 for me. So 10 years difference.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
But thinking about the changes, I mean, obviously, our medical. Maybe that is why newly diagnosed are not cared for longer
yeah,
because
yeah.
I think maybe the availability of testing our blood sugar. So maybe we had to be in the hospital for a full week
Right.
because they had the tools. We couldn't even go home with the tools to test our
Yeah,
blood sugar. So it took them longer to kind of get it dialed in.
right.
Um, and we were both young. But it's such an interesting thing. And I'm always, my mind's always going about, well, what if we still have that sort of a mindset now about
Yeah,
diagnosis and really nurturing people when they are diagnosed and not just handing them
not
the
rushing it
insulin
off.
and sending them out the door. And it's like, what? Because I can
Yeah.
only imagine that is leading to more despair,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, I definitely think like on the mental health side, that's something that isn't nurtured enough at the
Mm-hmm.
start.
Yes.
And I know that has, kind of impacted my life along the way.
Hmm. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah,
How, yeah. So it may be a before and now, as far as because obviously now
sure.
you are in a place where you're able to give back and to be there for
Mm.
others and to help them through their journey. So what was that transition for you and to get you where you are now?
Yeah, well, it's like you said, it definitely it was a journey. It has is ups and downs like most people with diabetes. And there was a lot of emotions that came with it. And definitely on the mental side of things. So burnout was definitely one of them, the overwhelm, the fear, the anxiety. Those are probably the main kind of emotions. But also doubt would have been a big one. And I guess there was this fear that with diabetes, it was going to hold me back from things. And also it's kind of a sad thing, but when I was younger, I just kind of automatically thought, well, I'm just not going to live as long. So
Mm,
maybe I will try to do a little bit more in this like life that I have. And this constant self-doubt would maybe race in my mind. I would have these voices in my mind that like, oh no, you can't do that because you have diabetes. Oh, you can't do
mm,
that because you have diabetes. But on the other hand, what I did learn through my journey is that even though this was kind of a limiting belief, it also helped to fuel me do things. So I do recall it was maybe a turning point in this kind of self-doubt journey that I had with diabetes. And
mm,
I watched my two best friends. I lived in Chicago then for a few years. I watched my two best friends run the marathon and I was cheering them on. And I kind of got to this realization, or what I thought was real, that I could not run a marathon. Like this was not going to be happen. And I actually said those words out loud. My
mm,
partner at the time, he's like, "Well, why can't you? Why?" And I was like, well, no, because of diabetes. But
mm,
I started to change that thinking. And I was like, well, surely there's other people that have run a marathon before with diabetes. And, I'll join a running group and I'll just, monitor my blood sugars throughout it. And with that, I trained. I even wrote like a blog about it, the experience of it. Because I think there is a bit of like, I was annoyed because my partner and my friends were doing it and they didn't have to train as hard because they didn't have this
mm,
whole other thing that they had
mhm,
to manage
mhm,
alongside of it. But
mhm,
I ended up crossing the finish line. And at that point, I was like, I was so proud of myself. I didn't even care what the time was. Like I had my insulin pump fell off. My blood sugar, I forgot about the adrenaline that happens at the start, and my blood sugar went high. So there are all these things, but it was more the importance of crossing that finish line and knowing that
mhm,
like, geez, I can do this.
mhm,
And that was kind of the fuel in my tank that really kind of propelled me to do other things, like even My husband and I then went cycling through Central America, and that was a 4 month journey, and it was incredible. And I knew kind of after doing some of these things and backpacking through Europe that I was like, diabetes doesn't have to hold me back. I can do these things. Maybe it's a little bit more of a careful management,
Mm-hmm.
but I can still do these things.
Yeah, yeah. And the steps you took were, I mean, these weren't like little things like, like just going to the gym, getting on the Stairmaster for 20 minutes. These are, yeah. So you took
Go
it to
big.
yeah, go big. But that was your story, and I'm sure you're continuing to add to that now, but it's such a good depiction of, our minds are so powerful. We
Oh,
can, we can talk ourselves in and out of anything.
yeah.
And I know, and you may work with your clients on these factors as well. We
Yes.
always start with, what we call the low hanging fruit, those
Yeah.
things that are very attainable, things
Yeah.
that they've already seen some sort of steps and action on or
Right.
success with, and just building on that. So, and you're an example where you did it in a very profound way, in a very, dramatic way. But that helped to just kind of reiterate in your head. It's like, oh no, those doubts are lies.
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
lies in my own. It was really your own thinking. Wasn't it? Was there anybody around you with doubts that were kind of feeding you with that doubt?
No, it
Yeah.
literally was it was self-doubt. It was my own voices in
Mm,
my own head. And it's funny looking back at my journey, and even when I do coach other people with diabetes and I hear these kind of limiting beliefs that, where is that rooted from? And sometimes it's just rooted in ourselves because of our condition.
yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
that it's real at all, but it's just that we kind of assume these things because of this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's even connected with certain personalities or energies that want it to be perfect,
Yeah.
or they want that, it's just like what you were saying before we hit record. That's the diabetes is really an art. It's not a science, and that should
Yeah.
be taught right at the get-go. Because yeah, we do the best we can, but it's all about those expectations too. That's definitely something we've
Yes.
talked here on the show before, is we've got to have a realistic eye about really what we
Absolutely.
can control, because we really can't control much of anything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
doing the best thing that we can, but to continue to see the success, the things that we are doing well.
Yeah.
And it reminds me too of that stigma that we can even put on ourselves,
Hmm.
about diabetes makes us weaker or
Yeah.
less than. And what you were saying
We're
about
not
how yeah, not enough,
we're not enough. Yeah.
yeah. But the fact that you clearly understood, and everybody around you probably understood when you were training for that marathon and getting ready for that hike, how much strength that takes, how much
Yeah.
resilience that takes. That, and I'm a believer, we are given what we can handle. God does not give us anything that he knows
Yeah.
that he did not
We
equip
can't
us with.
we can't do.
Yeah. So it's up to us to step into that
Yeah.
and to make that happen. But
It
again,
is.
it takes time. It takes time.
Yeah.
And
It's owning that
yeah.
responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it is, that's part of acceptance with diabetes. It's owning the responsibility that, okay, I have diabetes and now I have to be responsible for it. But that's hard because denial can set in. And I know in my own head, like it definitely has set in at, various times in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I have some exciting news. Whether or not you are a subscriber now or you want to be, which I highly suggest, every Tuesday I pop into your inbox, and I have a slight twist this year with what I am providing my subscribers. So you get practical tips on keeping things sustainable, from your kitchen to the gym, plus some guided thoughts. And I sprinkle in some, obviously, those practical tips and lots of hope. And I draw inspiration right here from my podcast episodes. And as a coach and woman managing diabetes myself, my aim is to help you balance insulin sensitivity, your hormones, and your emotions, living with type 1 diabetes. So And your feedback that I've received really has inspired me to make this switch to be a little bit more laser focused on what I'm providing every one of my followers right here. So it's in the kitchen, discovering meal ideas, carb-friendly recipes, healthier swaps, ingredients, and supplements to support you. And then in the gym, and you don't have to belong to a gym to benefit from what I'll share, just motivation to create your own routines, just to really focus in on building muscles, to strengthen our bone health, and of course, enhancing our insulin sensitivity, right? And then finally, in your thoughts, I share reflections and ideas to inspire your journey and your relationships, and most importantly, your acceptance of this condition, because you know what? Our thoughts dictate our health. So if this sounds like something you want to be a part of, simply visit the link right here in the show notes and subscribe and join us. We hope to see you there. What about relationship with food? And if this, I would love to know how this topic comes up with the people that you're helping as
Yeah,
well. It's such a big topic, and
it is
this is
big.
a yeah, and this is a funny thing because you know there's so much talk about diets and
Hmm.
ways of eating. I mean, unfortunately,
So
that will
many diets out there.
probably, yeah. And I remember somebody asking me one time, we were just talking about that. It was a group of girlfriends, those that didn't live with diabetes. So these were
Yeah.
just, and I couldn't connect with that conversation because I have never been on a quote
Hmm.
diet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, was there something wrong with me? I mean, I'm saying that in a kidding way because it seems to be just that mindset or that thinking that we get, especially as women,
Yeah.
I think, is those expectations or that relationship with food.
Hmm.
So, and then it made me look closer at my own relationship with food. And that doesn't mean
Yeah,
that
especially in terms of diabetes.
I know. Yeah. How we can judge. I will say carbohydrates, obviously, that's our nemesis, or the one that,
Yeah.
the one thing
Yeah.
that we have to,
The
keep an
dreaded
eye on.
carbs.
And again, the more I've learned, the more I've been able to just understand carbohydrates. So I've
Yeah.
had to change my relationship with carbohydrates
Yes.
and, to not, so I guess in a sense, I've had a kind of a mindset around food.
Hmm. Yeah, there
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think like it's so important. And like you said, when you talk to other people about, oh, they're doing this diet or that diet. And I remember when I was dancing, obviously body image was so big because I did classically trained ballet, and most of the people that I was training with were then going to become professional ballerinas. And it
Yeah.
was such this distinct body type that you had to be thin and this. And I was like, well, I actually have to eat. I can't,
Right.
I can't starve myself. I can't limit myself that much
Right.
because I need to actually eat. And
Yeah.
I think also at diagnosis, with this relationship with food, it's like automatically negative because of the fact that unfortunately, oftentimes they say we have to be so strict, or we have to have a special diet, or maybe we have to eat the same thing every day. And
Mm.
as we know, especially as coaches, like that's not sustainable, and it
Mm-mm.
can be detrimental to your relationship with food.
Absolutely. Talk about burnout. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah.
that carbs are bad for us.
Right. And, I've just started working recently with new clients, and that topic, it doesn't come up with a lot of new clients, but it has been that understanding that, so what, they're still looking for rules. They
Hmm.
want to really be able to go into a meal, and tell me what to eat, what's going to
Yeah.
work. And again, we can't do that. I'm not a dietitian. I can't tell you what to eat.
Yeah.
I can make suggestions. The biggest thing that I
So true.
teach and live is really balanced. It really is about,
Yep.
having that balanced plate, with the macros, so the protein,
Hmm.
healthy fats all mixed in there. That's really the only strategy I can share. The
Yes.
rest is really up to them,
Yeah.
who they are, what they what kind of foods they like, how much energy they expense,
Hmm.
and that has all, all related. So it's a big topic, but it's very unique.
Yeah.
The answer
Yeah.
has to be a very unique answer.
It is. And I think that goes back into kind of the sustainable, factor
Mm-hmm.
that, of course there is not one diet that fits everybody. And also
Mm-hmm.
people's taste buds are different. I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a family where like food was their world. My mom, ironically, was a dietitian, so that was very beneficial in me
Oh,
growing up with diabetes.
oh, that does
Yeah,
work.
so
Yeah.
she did kind of the home style American meals, but with a healthier twist. And then my dad was like very like he loved ethnic food. I mean, he would be making homemade pasta and sushi dishes. And then my aunt was like the big baker, and then my grandparents were big like home style cooking. They came from a German background. So
Mm,
food, I became a foodie myself because of being in that. But like in terms of me and what I work with my clients is awareness, education, and trials. So awareness is like you were saying, kind of understanding your food a little bit more.
mhm.
Knowing what's in the food that you're buying, that is, you read the nutrition labels, you look at the ingredients, you look at the carb, you have an understanding what if there's any red flags in the ingredient list. You
Mhm.
just have that more like awareness and education. And I do I do I do advise to maybe understand a little bit more GI, which the glycemic index is how fast certain foods can raise the blood
Mhm.
sugar. So that
Mhm.
people just understand that if they implement certain food, that maybe afterwards you could spike. So maybe balance it out with other things,
Yeah.
maybe protein or fiber,
Mhm.
and
Helps
then
to slow it down. Yeah.
yeah, and then
Yeah. Yeah.
and sometimes it's just trial and error.
Mm.
And I think by doing trial and error, you're not restricting yourself that much. Um, but you have an understanding the next time you go to eat this meal, how it's going to impact you. And you can look at your data and you can make tweaks. And in the end, it kind of gives you a little bit more confidence when you're making decisions around food and your insulin regime and how your blood sugars are going to react. But
Yeah.
ultimately, like you said, it's about balance. I am a flexitarian, I like to call myself.
I like that. Talk about flexible.
Yeah, yeah,
Flexitarian. Oh my gosh. I know. You need to patent that one.
yeah, yeah.
That's a good one. So what do you, and you just touched on something that I was thinking about, because this is coming up a lot with myself, and it comes up with a lot of conversations I'm having with that delayed glucose
Mm,
response. So, and it's generally when there's a lot of fat that's
yeah,
included, because fat does slow down the absorption, and then it
right.
catches up with us 3 or 4 hours later. What is your strategy? And this is a good way just to kind of share some tips as we're talking today, that people
Yeah.
can kind of some really good takeaways. So what's your strategy with that? I'll call it the delayed glucose response, which is
Delayed
really
glucose.
what it is. All right.
Yeah, yeah. And I think because there's so much buzz around like high protein diets and like the
Mm,
keto diets, that this is coming maybe more awareness. People are trying to understand, how it actually reacts to our body. And you know, a lot of times the high protein diets have more fat, as you were saying. And I know like sometimes I can experience a blood sugar spike later on, and
mhm,
even also a little bit of insulin resistance.
mhm.
So it's like that dreaded pizza meal
Yep,
where
yep.
it's
That's the
like,
number one, right?
yeah, it's so hard to do because you have your fat from your cheese, you have your protein, maybe if you have meat on there, you have your carbohydrates. There's so much going on.
There's so much
Um,
going on. Yeah,
yeah, for
yeah.
myself,
Hmm.
if I am having a little bit more higher of a protein and if it is a little bit higher in fat, I do
Hmm.
try to like to eat a little bit of fiber first. So that could even be something as simple as like a salad, like a small
Salad.
little
Hmm.
salad.
Hmm.
And I do often
That's
have. Yeah.
Yes, I have to agree. I'm going to interrupt you. That is, and I'm starting to learn this more and more.
Yeah.
And I picked up on that on some other dietitians that I was listening to, to front load it with fiber, so the
Mm,
salad. And the
yeah.
trick with this is the fun part, is that obviously we're getting in more
The
vegetables. So
magic.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
So it's forcing you, because I love salad. I eat them all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But for those that might have an aversion to eating the vegetables, not only are you getting your vitamins and minerals in with those
Hmm.
vegetables, you're filling up. So you're a
Yes.
little bit more
Yeah.
satisfied.
Yeah.
And then you indulge in a piece of pizza or two. And it's amazing, because you're right.
Hmm.
It is as simple as that.
Yeah.
Just to, the order of eating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is strange, but like it like that, it can be so simple. And it goes
Mm-hmm.
back to like when you go to a restaurant and you're like, okay, would you like a side salad to go with this? And it always
Sure.
comes out beforehand. So it's
Mm-hmm.
almost kind of like, oh, that's why that's maybe why they do that.
Unfortunately, fortunately, sometimes they bring out the bread basket too, right?
Yeah, yeah, the bread basket. Skip the bread, skip the bread. No, I always say like, do you know what?
Yeah.
I don't need to count my carbs on the bread. I'll count them on the good stuff.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yeah, sometimes I do have to split my insulin doses and give a little
Mm.
percentage up front and then another one a little bit later,
Yeah.
2 hours before.
Yeah.
There is an app called Diabetes M, the diabetes management app, where you can put in all your fat and your calories and your carbs and what your glucose is, and it does help to give a little bit of
A little
advice
bit
on
of,
that. And that,
okay. That's good
yeah,
to
that
know.
that kind of that helps me. Um, but I think again, when we think about protein, is that, there are other things that have protein in it that aren't as high fat. Like is a quinoa was like such a huge buzz food like a few years ago, but it really does deserve the buzz and the
Mm-hmm.
praise because it is like a whole grain that actually has a structure of a protein, but
Mm-hmm.
it's obviously not high in fat, and it's not as high as in calories. But
Mm-hmm.
you can also get that fat from tofu and, even vegetables.
There you
So I
go.
think there's that
Uh-huh.
kind of understanding, like when we think of a high protein diet, like it doesn't mean that we have to take all the vegetables out either. So just again, it goes back to that balancing your plate and
Yeah.
seeing what's on it and really kind of integrating different things to help manage your glucose levels better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's just paying attention to those trends. And yeah, and I like what you mentioned too, and there is no one size fits all.
No.
And another, and and then guess what? We start to age, and then hormones are changing, and this is something
Ah,
that I didn't, when I was in my reproductive years, after having my daughter 28 years ago.
yeah.
This was not something I was educated on. I did not know that my
No.
cycle every month, and this is just now becoming talked about, thank goodness. If I only knew what I knew what I knew
Yeah.
now, what I knew then, it would have avoided a lot of highs and
Hmm.
lows. Again, it's all about understanding how the body is kind of operating with
Yeah.
what you're giving it. And again, we're doing this manually. This is something that we're
Yeah.
trying to, this is
Yeah.
a math
Think
problem
like a
every day.
pancreas. Jeez.
Think like a pancreas for sure. So, and as we know, hormones are dropping.
Hmm.
Resistance tends to start to kick in.
Hmm.
Estrogen is dropping. Estrogen is such an amazing receptor that it's so involved with
Yeah.
everything that's going on, all the different aspects of the body and the functions. And so, what are you noticing? So,
Yeah.
if you don't mind me saying, you're in your early 40s, if you don't
Yeah.
mind me
I'm
throwing your
43.
age,
That's
okay?
okay. I don't
Yeah,
mind.
yeah. And so, you're still, I mean, you're not even quite even perimenopause, but again, that term kind of, there's such a misunderstanding of,
Yeah.
perimenopause is a new term.
Yeah.
It's,
And it's actual a time. It's a proper phase.
it absolutely is. And again, these are things that are starting to get obviously studied and documented and
Hmm.
shared. And we're becoming again more aware of what's going on
Yeah.
as we age. So, aging with type 1 diabetes, aging is tough enough, right? Or
Yeah.
challenging enough,
Yeah.
you know,
Top it
for,
off with diabetes too.
yeah, throw type 1 in there. Yeah, it's something. So, are you noticing any differences right
Uh,
now?
I am experiencing some more erratic numbers that I definitely didn't maybe in my 30s. My glucose numbers are definitely fluctuating a little bit more. And I
Mm,
think the other thing is that like my body probably isn't as resilient as it once was. So like even exercise can really cause more dramatic impact on my glucose than before. I think the other things is that like sometimes in the morning my glucose is quite irregular. Like I in the morning typically I do eat the same thing. Weekends are a little bit different, but it can be so different after I eat my breakfast, my porridge with my nuts and my seeds and my berries. And
hmm
I do find that there's definitely more fluctuations in my glucose levels, and it's making it a little bit harder to tighten control. And during my menstrual cycle, I find that I'm nearly on twice as much insulin and
mm,
more insulin resistance. And
hmm
it's definitely a topic that I I know that I need to educate myself on a little bit more. And like even like your podcasts have been brilliant to create a little bit more awareness and understanding of this phase. And
hmm
I think that's it. Like I think we're at an age where people are talking about it more, where before it was really kind of a hidden topic and
hmm
no one or it's a sensitive topic. No one wanted to talk
Yeah.
about it. So I love the
Yeah.
fact that we're sharing our
hmm
experiences
hmm
with it more to help
Yeah,
each other go
absolutely.
through
That's
this.
right. Absolutely. Yes. I was lucky. I studied integrative nutrition. Let's see, back in 2016. So that's 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I was, I'm just doing my own math in my head. I was late 40s,
Uh-huh.
and that was good time. And then I went on and
Yeah.
studied hormone health, which is kind of added to it. You know, it's so
Complimentary.
funny. It's so funny when I think about it because I wasn't even thinking when I was going through that hormone course
Hmm.
because I was looking more at insulin as my hormone I was studying. Obviously, it was all about the reproductive and
Yeah.
menopause, thyroid, all of those hormones. Um, I didn't realize how much it was going to impact me in these last
Yeah.
couple of years, just that schooling. And it equipped me as a patient, as a woman
Yeah.
living with diabetes.
Yeah,
And
right.
even with having having everything that we think we need right in front of us with the resources, it still can be a challenging
Yeah.
stage, not only emotionally, because, we're going through it. We can't change what's happening, even if we
Yeah.
know why, even if we have some plans, some solutions that are in front of us. But
Still
I
have
think that
to adapt it to ourselves, right?
yeah, it does start with ourselves. And then you've got to find a good, a doctor or medical team that are going to
Hmm.
support you on whatever decisions you make. So I can't imagine not having that support, and going through menopause as a
Yeah.
woman living with type 1. We are here for you, ladies. So definitely keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely keep in touch with us. Um, yeah, it's so important. The stigma, the shame around this topic. This is a natural stage of life, so it is celebrated for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
hmm So, what are your thoughts about aging with type 1? Because you
Hmm.
in your earlier years, you were talking about how you shared when we started here just about kind of those doubts, and
Yeah.
you've already kind of pushed through them and come to some amazing steps and conquer some of those things. Is there anything now in this stage of life, because you're married, you've got a
Uh-huh.
couple kids, so
Two
you've got
kids, yeah, 10
yeah
and 7, yeah.
mm-hmm
Yeah, that's a really good question because through my life, with that doubt, and I also hid it a lot. Um, I remember after I graduated college, I went to Australia and I worked and I lived out there and I met an Irish guy out there. Um, and thought, oh, I'm never going to meet him again. Come back to America and we connect. And now I'm married to him. But
mm,
during that first year that I had met him and we were dating, I didn't even tell him I had type 1 diabetes.
wow
And there was that shame, or maybe it was rejection. I don't know what it was. Again,
mm-hmm.
it was in my maybe it was that stigma, or that I was going to feel like a burden to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, do you know, when I told him, he was like, I said, "Oh, I have to tell you something." And I told him, "Oh, I have type 1 diabetes." He's like, "Okay." So, you know, and like through it all and have been able to be more open about it, like on my my social media, crazy about diabetes, like through health coaching and helping other people with type 1 diabetes, my own website blog. I think, I am at a point in my life now with diabetes where I have a little bit I have acceptance with it. I'm content with it. And like it didn't happen overnight, looking back and sharing some of these stories with you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that also, I'm proud of myself of doing the things that I've done. And I wouldn't be the person here now in talking with you if I didn't go through all of those challenges, those
Right.
lows, those highs with type 1 diabetes. So I definitely feel I'm a little bit more comfortable in my own skin and that it's just part of me. It doesn't define me, but it has made up who I am, and ultimately, I have a
Mm-hmm.
little
Mm-hmm.
bit more peace with myself, and I'm not hiding it, and,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not bothered if somebody asks me like, "Oh, what's that on your arm?" And it's my, CGM sensor.
Mm-hmm.
I actually open up and I talk about it more so that people can understand what diabetes
Mm-hmm.
is and what it's not,
Mm-hmm.
and also, how it relates to me, and I think all of those things help me to have a more compassion and
Mm-hmm.
beauty kind of within.
Oh, I like that.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, you are. Yes, yes. You're a bright, you are, you're such a gem in our community. I appreciate that. So if we had any takeaways or some things to share with the listeners, I'm thinking of everything that we just kind of unpacked. And
Yeah.
it started with, you know, that self-judgment.
Yeah.
And then realizing that what we were kind of pointing to as a downfall, a burden, is now something that we're able to, it's a phrase I
Mhm.
use, I've turned a pain into a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there is a purpose.
Great,
And
great term.
we're both meeting, I know you are too, we're both meeting such amazing ladies. I've had so many of them
Yeah.
here on the show telling their stories, and that is our goal here, is to share real life.
Share, connection, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and to find somebody you can connect with, and to that these topics and these stories really do resonate. So is there any final thoughts that you have?
Well, I think, when we were talking a little bit about aging with diabetes, and life is constantly changing. Our bodies are constantly changing. So it's kind of like how we managed our diabetes 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago, even like last year. It may not be the same as we're managing it today. So it is to be, resilient and to adapt the way that we're living with
Mm,
diabetes to help to really bring it forward. And I think the other thing is that I I would have told myself to be a little bit more gentle with
mm,
myself and to bring a little bit more joy into my life so that it doesn't have diabetes doesn't have to take it the good and the fun out of life. Like, of course you'll have your
mhm.
bad days because that's life, but
Right.
it's how you pick yourself up and you find the time to embrace those good days, but also any of those small wins that come along the way with your journey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We always have to see, even with diabetes, to see the glass half full, and
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, to
the
have
silver lining
gratitude.
of it.
Hmm. That's right. Well, I appreciate your time with us today, and
Oh, I've
just to
had a
open up
great
and
time
sharing.
talking. This has been
Yeah.
wonderful.
Well, let our listeners know how they can find you and connect with you, Erin.
Absolutely. So on Instagram and Facebook, it's Crazy About Diabetes. And also I have a website, crazyaboutdiabetes.com. And I help people with diabetes thrive with their life and support them on balancing life with diabetes, type 1 diabetes, and support them on their mental health and just to find a little bit more acceptance with it.
Very perfect. Perfect. And I'll definitely link all of this right here in the show notes. Well, we
Thank you.
hope that this conversation moved you today. It moved me.
Absolutely. Set me up for the weekend.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll be back in here next week. And yes, please reach out and connect with Erin. And we will see you back in here same time next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the Type 1 and Midlife podcast. We are so grateful for the time that we spent together today. And if this conversation resonated with you, or you just love connecting with others living with T1D, please take a moment to leave a rating and review. Your feedback helps us reach more people who need this community and resources. And if you realize you need more support than you're currently getting, remember you don't have to struggle alone. Visit me at abundanthealthwithmelissa.com for free resources on mastering type 1 diabetes in menopause and to stay connected and learn about my coaching programs. We look forward to being together next Monday. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single episode. Remember that together we can age gracefully with type 1 diabetes.